Savannah Miller, 28, never imagined that being forced to wear a hideous neon green bridesmaid dress at her sister Amber's extravagant wedding would lead to such life-altering consequences. As she stood at the reception, champagne in hand, watching her childhood best friend and now brother-in-law James whisper something in her sister's ear before walking straight toward her, Savannah knew nothing would ever be the same again. The look of pure hatred on Amber's face told her that 15 years of sisterly competition had finally reached its breaking point. Hey everyone, before I dive into this wild family drama, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If you enjoy real-life revenge stories with unexpected twists, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more shocking family drama every week. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma finally caught up with my sister after years of cruel manipulation. Growing up as the daughters of Richard and Eleanor Miller in suburban Boston, Amber and I were never what you'd call close. Being just 14 months apart meant constant comparison was inevitable, but what made it truly toxic was how our parents handled it. Amber, the elder sister, was the golden child from day one, beautiful, sociable, and academically gifted. I was quieter, more creative, and according to our mother, just not quite as put together as my sister. Our childhood home in Lexington was spacious and comfortable, but emotionally it felt suffocating. Dad worked as a cardiothoracic surgeon at Massachusetts General, and Mom managed a successful interior design business. They provided us with every material comfort, while simultaneously feeding a rivalry that would shape our entire lives. Savannah, why can't you get straight? As like your sister, Mom would ask while reviewing my report card, which typically showed B's in math and sciences, but A's in English and art. Colleges look at everything you know. Meanwhile, Amber would sit at the kitchen island pretending to be absorbed in her homework but secretly smirking. She thrived on these comparisons, collecting each one like a trophy. The first major incident I can recall happened when I was 8. I'd spent weeks creating a watercolor painting of our family vacation to Cape Cod for the school art show. My art teacher had praised it highly, even suggesting I had real talent. The night before the show, I found it destroyed, soaked through with water that had accidentally been spilled. Amber apologized profusely, but I caught the glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. It's okay, accidents happen, our mother consoled Amber while I fought back tears. Savannah can make another one sometime. But there wasn't time, and my empty spot at the art show became another reminder of how I always seemed to come up short. As we entered our teen years, the dynamic only intensified. Amber became head cheerleader, homecoming queen, and valedictorian. I found my place with the theater crowd, discovered a passion for creative writing, and maintained a solid B+ average. I wasn't unhappy with my achievements, but in our household they were perpetually overshadowed. The most painful part wasn't Amber's success, it was her need to diminish mine. When I landed the lead in the school play junior year, she convinced 3 of her friends to try out for the same production, then orchestrated drama that made rehearsals miserable. When I won a statewide essay contest senior year, she announced her early acceptance to Princeton at the same dinner meant to celebrate my achievement. The competition extended to our social lives as well. Amber didn't date much in high school. She claimed boys at our school weren't worth her time, but she made sure to sabotage any relationship I attempted. She'd suddenly become interested in whoever showed interest in me, testing her power and my insecurities. All except for James. James Henderson moved to our school district when we were 16. With dark wavy hair, intelligent green eyes, and a quiet confidence, he immediately caught Amber's attention. For once, she didn't hide her interest. She pursued him openly and aggressively. But surprisingly, James wasn't receptive. Instead, James and I bonded over a shared love of classic literature and indie films. We'd spend hours at the local coffee shop discussing everything from Steinbeck to Tarantino. It was the first time I'd formed a close friendship with someone who seemed completely immune to Amber's charms. She was livid. "He's just using you to get to me," she insisted one night after barging into my room uninvited. "Guys like him don't go for girls like you." "We're just friends," I replied, though I'd begun to hope for more. "And maybe he just likes talking to someone who doesn't treat every conversation like a competition." Amber's eyes narrowed. "Watch yourself, Savannah. You've always been jealous of me." It's pathetic. As graduation approached, James and I grew closer, but never crossed the line from friendship to romance. I sensed he might want to, but something held him back. Perhaps my own fear of further provoking Amber's wrath. Then came the night of senior prom. James asked me to go as friends, and I happily accepted. I found a simple but elegant navy blue dress that made me feel beautiful for once. The night of the prom, I waited downstairs, corsage in hand, heart fluttering with anticipation. But James never showed. Instead, I received a text, "Sorry, something came up, can't make it." An hour later, I discovered through social media what that something was. Amber had manipulated the situation masterfully. She'd told James I'd changed my mind about going with him, then she'd conveniently offered herself as his replacement date. The photos showed them together, her in a stunning red gown, him looking confused but attempting to smile. That night marked the beginning of the end of my close friendship with James. After graduation, he and I both ended up at different colleges. Me at Boston University, him at Columbia, and Amber at Princeton. We occasionally texted, but the easy friendship we'd once shared felt tainted by Amber's interference. What I didn't know then was that this pattern of betrayal and manipulation was far from over. It was just the foundation for a much more devastating deception that would unfold years later with consequences none of us could have anticipated. 8 years after high school graduation, I had built a life I was proud of. With a master's degree in creative writing and a promising position as an editor at a respected publishing house in Boston, I had finally found my footing outside of Amber's shadow. My apartment in Cambridge was small but filled with books, art, and the sense of independence I'd craved growing up. I hadn't seen James in person since that disastrous prom night, though. We'd maintained sporadic contact through social media, mostly birthday wishes and occasional comments on photos. Amber and I had settled into a pattern of obligatory holiday gatherings and forced civility with months of blessed silence in between. Then came the invitation to our 10-year high school reunion. Initially, I considered skipping it. What was there to gain from revisiting old wounds? But curiosity, and perhaps a lingering need for closure, pushed me to RSVP yes. The reunion was held at an upscale hotel in downtown Boston, a sea of familiar yet changed faces greeting me as I entered the ballroom. I was chatting with my old theater friends when a hand touched my shoulder. "Savannah Miller, you haven't changed a bit." I turned to find James Henderson smiling down at me, more handsome than ever in a well-tailored navy suit. He'd filled out since high school, his jawline more defined, but those kind green eyes remained the same. "James, what a surprise! I thought you were living in New York." I was. Moved back to Boston 6 months ago for a job at Mass General. I'm finishing my surgical residency. We fell into easy conversation as if the years and complications had never existed. He asked about my work, genuinely interested in my publishing career. I learned he'd followed in my father's footsteps into medicine, though he specialized in pediatric surgery rather than cardiothoracic. "I've thought about you often," he admitted, as we shared a drink at the bar. "I always regretted how things ended senior year." "You mean when you stood me up for prom?" I raised an eyebrow, but there was no real bitterness in my voice anymore. He winced. "About that, I need to clear something up. Amber told me you'd come down with the flu and suggested I take her instead so the ticket wouldn't go to waste. I only found out weeks later that you'd been waiting for me." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me yet, it still stung. Another manipulation in Amber's long history of them. Water under the bridge, I said. Though we both knew it had been much more than that. We exchanged numbers and began meeting regularly. Coffee dates that turned into dinner dates, movie nights, long walks along the Charles River. It felt like we were reclaiming something precious that had been stolen from us years ago. 3 months into our rekindled friendship, which was rapidly evolving into something more, James received a job offer from a prestigious children's hospital in Chicago. The night he told me was the first time he kissed me. A gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened into something that made my knees weak. "Come with me," he whispered against my lips. We could start fresh, away from all the history. The offer was tempting, but I had just been promoted at work. My first book of short stories was being considered by publishers. Leaving Boston meant leaving the life I'd worked so hard to build. "I need time to think," I told him, and he understood. The next day, I decided to surprise James at his apartment, ready to tell him I'd take the leap of faith. But when I arrived, I found Amber's car parked outside. Something cold and familiar settled in my stomach as I approached his building. I still had the key James had given me for emergencies. Quietly, I let myself in, following the sound of voices to the living room. What I saw froze me in place. James and Amber sat close together on the couch, champagne flutes in hand. Amber was laughing, her head thrown back in the calculated way she had when flirting. "She doesn't need to know yet," I heard Amber say. "Let's keep it our little secret a while longer." James nodded, a smile playing at his lips. "You're right, it's better this way." I must have made a sound because they both looked up, startled to see me standing there. Amber recovered first, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "Savannah, what perfect timing. We were just celebrating James's new job and other developments." James stood quickly. "Savannah, this isn't how I wanted you to find out." Find out what? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Amber extended her left hand where a massive diamond ring caught the light. "We're engaged. Isn't it wonderful?" James and I reconnected at the reunion too. "We've been seeing each other secretly, and he proposed last night." I looked to James, waiting for him to deny it, to explain that this was another of Amber's elaborate deceptions. But he just looked guilty and uncomfortable. "I was going to tell you," he said lamely. "I just couldn't find the right moment. The right moment, between kisses, between asking me to move to Chicago with you. The betrayal was so complete, it felt almost like physical pain." Amber's smile faltered. "What is she talking about, James?" Now it was his turn to look caught. "It's complicated, Amber. Savannah and I have been spending some time together too." What followed was an ugly scene. Amber screaming, James attempting to explain how he'd been confused about his feelings, me standing silently as the full extent of the deception became clear. I left without another word, ignoring James's calls and texts over the following days. A week later, I received a formal invitation to Amber and James's engagement party. The handwritten note from Amber read simply, "I always win. See you there, sis." I should have stayed away, should have cut them both out of my life completely. But something in me couldn't let Amber have this final victory without witnessing it firsthand. Little did I know that attending that engagement party would set in motion events that would change all our lives forever. The Miller family estate in Lexington, with its manicured gardens and colonial architecture, provided the perfect backdrop for Amber's engagement celebration. My parents had spared no expense. Champagne flowed freely, a string quartet played softly in the corner, and flowers worth thousands adorned every surface. It was exactly the type of extravagance Amber had always expected as her due. I arrived deliberately late, slipping in through the side entrance to avoid an immediate confrontation. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a sleek black dress that projected confidence rather than mourning, though inside I felt hollow. My mother spotted me first, hurrying over with a glass of champagne and a warning disguised as concern. There you are, darling. We were beginning to worry you wouldn't come. She pressed the glass into my hand and lowered her voice. Please, Savannah, let's not have any drama tonight. This is an important evening for your sister. When have I ever been the one to cause drama, Mom? I replied, taking a long sip of champagne. My father joined us, giving me a quick, awkward hug. Good to see you, Pumpkin. You look nice. His hesitation spoke volumes. Amber undoubtedly looked better. She always did in their eyes. I spotted her across the room, resplendent in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. James stood beside her, one arm around her waist as they accepted congratulations from a group of relatives. He looked uncomfortable, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. When Amber saw me, she whispered something to James before making her way toward me, radiating triumph. Savannah, I'm so glad you could make it. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. Doesn't everything look divine? Mom really outdid herself. It's beautiful, I admitted. Congratulations, Amber. Thank you. She lowered her voice. I know this must be difficult for you. James told me everything about your little friendship. So sweet that you thought it was something more. I maintained my composure. Did he tell you he asked me to move to Chicago with him the night before he proposed to you? A flash of uncertainty crossed her face before she recovered. Men say all kinds of things when they're confused. But he made the right choice in the end. He always was too good for you. Before I could respond, she was called away for photos, leaving me with the bitter taste of her words. I found a quiet corner and contemplated leaving. I'd made my appearance shown I wasn't broken. What more was there to gain by staying? Then I noticed something odd. James's mother, Catherine Henderson, was engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with my father near the bar. I'd always liked Catherine. She was warm and unpretentious, everything my own mother was not. Now she looked distressed, repeatedly shaking her head at whatever my father was saying. Curiosity pulled me in their direction. As I approached, I caught fragments of their conversation. Absolutely unacceptable, Richard. I won't stand by while. Business arrangement that benefits everyone involved, your son included. He deserves to know the truth before they abruptly stopped speaking when they noticed me. My father's face flushed while Catherine looked at me with unexpected sympathy. Savannah, she said warmly, taking my hand. I've been hoping to speak with you. My father intervened quickly. Catherine, this isn't the time or place. We agreed. No, Richard. I never agreed to this deception. She turned back to me. Savannah, there are things happening here that you don't understand. Things James doesn't fully understand either. What things? I asked, my suspicions rising. Before she could answer, a crystal chime rang out, calling everyone's attention to the center of the room where Amber and James now stood. It was time for the official announcement and toasts. My father hurried away to join them, while Catherine held my gaze for a meaningful moment. Find me later, she whispered before walking away. The formal proceedings began with my father's booming voice welcoming everyone. He spoke glowingly of the young couple, emphasizing what a perfect match they were. I watched James closely. He seemed distracted, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Something like regret flashed across his face before Amber reclaimed his attention with a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. After my father finished, it was Amber's turn to speak. She thanked everyone for coming, gushed about her ring, and then delivered the knife twist I should have seen coming. And I have one more special announcement, she said, her voice saccharine. Since family is so important to us, James and I want to involve everyone in our special day. So Savannah, she looked directly at me, I'd be honored if you would be my maid of honor. A murmur of awes rippled through the crowd. To everyone else, this seemed like a lovely inclusive gesture. But I understood it for what it was, another opportunity to showcase her victory, to force me to stand by and watch as she took the man I had loved for so long. Of course, I responded automatically, years of conditioning, making it impossible to refuse such a public request. I'd be honored. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I avoided both James and Amber, instead seeking out Catherine Henderson. I found her on the terrace staring out at the garden lights. "Mrs. Henderson," I began, "you wanted to speak with me." She turned her kind face troubled. "Savannah, I've always thought highly of you. You deserve to know what's really happening here." "What do you mean?" she hesitated. "Your father's medical practice has been struggling financially for years. Bad investments, malpractice suits, he kept quiet. He's on the verge of bankruptcy." This was news to me. My father had always projected an image of unwavering success. What does that have to do with Amber and James? My late husband left James a substantial trust fund, nearly $20 million, which he gains full control of when he marries. Your father approached James 6 months ago with a business proposition disguised as fatherly interest. He suggested James return to Boston, reconnect with Amber. The pieces started falling into place. "Are you saying this engagement is some kind of business arrangement?" Catherine nodded grimly. "Richard promised James a partnership in his practice connections that would advance his career significantly. In return, your father gets access to capital through Amber that would save him from financial ruin. Does James know about the financial troubles?" "No. He believes he's helping secure his future father-in-law's legacy, not saving him from disgrace. And..." She paused. "James doesn't know I'm aware of any of this. I overheard them discussing it months ago." My mind was reeling. "But what about me? Why did James pursue me if he was planning to marry Amber?" Catherine's eyes softened. "Because he's genuinely in love with you, Savannah. He always has been. But your father made it clear that choosing you would mean professional suicide. Richard has powerful friends who could end James's surgical career before it truly begins." The cruelty of it stunned me. My own father using me as a pawn, once again ensuring Amber would win while I lost everything. Does Amber know about this arrangement? I believe she knows some version of it. Whether she knows how her father manipulated everything, I can't say. As Catherine finished speaking, I spotted James watching us from the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but I sensed he knew we weren't just making small talk. "Thank you for telling me," I said to Catherine. "I need some time to process this." I slipped past James without acknowledging him and left the party, my mind churning with revelations and possibilities. For the first time in our long history of rivalry, I understood that Amber's victory over me wasn't just about her own desires. It was orchestrated by the very people who should have protected us both from such toxic competition. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. The wedding was only 3 months away. Whatever action I decided to take would have consequences for everyone involved, including myself. As the weeks passed and wedding preparations intensified, I found myself caught in Amber's carefully constructed web. The role of maid of honor came with endless responsibilities that Amber seemed to delight in assigning me, addressing 500 invitations by hand, coordinating with difficult vendors, attending multiple fittings for the bridesmaid. A dress she had selected specifically to make me look as unflattering as possible. The dress in question was a horrific neon green monstrosity with puffy sleeves and an empire waist that made even the slimmest bridesmaid look 6 months pregnant. When I gently suggested a different color might complement the wedding's alleged elegant garden theme, Amber had smiled sweetly. "But green is your favorite color, Savannah. I'm doing this for you." Green had been my favorite color when I was 7. I hadn't expressed a preference for it in over 20 years. Today marked yet another wedding obligation, the final fitting for this atrocity of fashion. I stood in the upscale bridal salon surrounded by mirrors that offered no escape from the image of myself drowning in layers of acid green taffeta. "It's perfect," Amber declared, circling me like a shark. "The color really brings out what would you call it, the sallowness of your complexion." Our mother, who had accompanied us, made a small noise of disapproval. "Amber, be nice. The dress is unique. Perhaps a slight adjustment to the neckline." "No adjustments," Amber said firmly. "Everything needs to be exactly as I've envisioned." Her phone chimed and she stepped aside to take the call, leaving me alone with our mother for the first time in weeks. "Mom," I said quietly, "did you know about Dad's financial problems?" Eleanor Miller froze, her carefully maintained facade cracking slightly before she recovered. "What financial problems?" "Your father's practice is doing wonderfully." "That's not what I've heard." "I've heard he's on the verge of bankruptcy, and that's why he orchestrated this whole thing between Amber and James." "Who told you such nonsense?" Her voice had risen an octave, a telltale sign she was hiding something. "It doesn't matter who told me. Is it true?" She glanced nervously toward Amber, who was still absorbed in her phone call. "We've had some temporary setbacks. Nothing serious. Your father has everything under control. By selling his daughter to the highest bidder," Savannah, she hissed. "How dare you suggest such a thing? James and Amber are in love." "Are they? Or is this just another example of you and Dad favoring Amber at my expense?" Her eyes narrowed. "You've always been jealous of your sister. Even now you can't stand to see her happy." It was the same accusation I'd heard my entire life, but this time it didn't sting. I'd grown immune to their manipulations. "I'm not jealous, Mom. I'm sad. Sad that my parents created this toxic rivalry instead of teaching us to love and support each other. Sad that Dad is willing to use both his daughters as pawns in his financial schemes." Before she could respond, Amber returned her expression suspiciously pleased. "Good news, the florist can get those rare orchids I wanted after all. It's only going to cost an extra $5,000. Our mother paled slightly but nodded. "Whatever you want, darling. It's your special day." After the fitting, I escaped to a nearby cafe, desperate for a moment of peace. I was stirring my third packet of sugar into my coffee when a shadow fell across my table. "Mind if I join you?" I looked up to find James standing there, looking exhausted in his hospital scrubs. Without waiting for an answer, he slid into the chair opposite mine. "Stalking me now?" I asked, keeping my tone light despite the turmoil his presence caused. "I saw you through the window." He gestured to his coffee cup. I was grabbing caffeine before heading back for another 12-hour shift. An awkward silence stretched between us. "How are the wedding plans going?" he finally asked. "Shouldn't you know? You're the groom." He grimaced. "Amber doesn't want me involved. Says I'll just mess things up." "That sounds like Amber." Another silence. "Luna, Savannah, about what happened?" I cut him off. "Don't. Please don't give me excuses or apologies. What's done is done." "Is it?" His green eyes searched mine. "My mother mentioned she spoke to you at the engagement party." I tensed. "What did she tell you about that conversation?" "Nothing specific. Just that you two had an enlightening discussion. She's been pushing me to reconsider the engagement ever since." I considered my options carefully. If Catherine hadn't revealed her knowledge of the arrangement to James, it wasn't my place to do so. Yet, I couldn't let this charade continue without at least trying to understand his motivations. "Why are you really marrying Amber, James? Is it for the career advancement, the connections, the money?" His jaw tightened. "It's complicated." "Love shouldn't be complicated. Either you love her or you don't." "And if I said I don't, if I said it's you I've always wanted?" His voice had dropped to a near whisper. My heart betrayed me, racing at his words, but I forced myself to remember the stakes. "I'd say you have a funny way of showing it." He leaned forward. Your father made it clear that certain doors would close permanently if I chose you over Amber. My entire career, everything I've worked for, so you chose ambition over happiness, over us. I thought I could have both. The career and you in my life somehow. As what? Your mistress, your dirty little secret. The bitterness I'd been suppressing bubbled to the surface. I never meant to hurt you. Yet, here we are. I gathered my things needing to escape before my resolve crumbled. The wedding is in 2 weeks. You still have time to make this right. Not for me, but for yourself. Don't marry someone you don't love, James. It won't end well for anyone. I left him sitting there, his coffee untouched. As I pushed through the door, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber, emergency bridesmaid meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. We need to discuss your toast and some special surprises I have planned. A sense of foreboding washed over me. I'd known Amber long enough to recognize when she was plotting something particularly malicious. The next day, I arrived at Amber's penthouse apartment precisely at 2. The other bridesmaids, all Amber's college friends or work colleagues who barely knew me, were already there sipping mimosas and picking at a charcuterie board. Finally, Amber said, though I was exactly on time, "Now we can begin." What followed was an hour of increasingly outrageous demands, specific hairstyles that would clash horribly with our complexions, mandatory spray tans that would make us look orange, and a fun surprise for the reception. "I've prepared a special slideshow," Amber announced, her smile predatory. "I'm calling it The Truth About Savannah. It's a collection of all her most embarrassing moments over the years. You know, to add some humor to the speeches." The other bridesmaids tittered nervously, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge the bride. "You can't be serious," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "Oh, but I am. I've got everything: your awkward acne phase, that time you wet the bed at summer camp, your failed relationships, even some choice excerpts from your diary about your pathetic crush on James all these years." Hot shame and anger coursed through me. "Why are you doing this? Isn't marrying him enough of a victory for you?" Her smile never faltered. "This isn't about winning, Savannah. It's about putting you in your place once and for all. You've always thought you were so special, so much better than me with your writing and your creativity. But look who's wearing the wedding dress, and who's wearing that hideous green monstrosity." One of the bridesmaids, a woman named Rachel, who seemed the least enthralled by Amber, cleared her throat. "Maybe we should focus on celebrating your relationship with James rather than this." Amber turned her cold gaze on Rachel. "Did I ask for your opinion? This is my wedding and I'll celebrate it however I want." After the meeting, Rachel caught up with me in the hallway. "I'm sorry about that. I've never seen this side of Amber before. I've seen it my whole life," I replied wearily. Rachel hesitated, then lowered her voice. "You should know, Amber's been acting strange lately. I overheard her on the phone with someone talking about making sure the plan goes perfectly at the wedding. Something about finally getting everything she deserves. That could mean anything with Amber. Maybe." Rachel looked troubled. "But she also mentioned your father and some kind of business arrangement. It didn't sound like normal wedding talk." This new information confirmed my suspicions. Amber wasn't just aware of our father's manipulations. She was an active participant. The wedding wasn't just about beating me or even about James. It was about securing her financial future through our father's machinations. As the wedding day approached, I found myself at a moral crossroads. Should I expose the truth and potentially destroy my family in the process? Or should I play my assigned role in this farce and watch as James tied himself to a loveless marriage and my sister secured her golden parachute the night before, in the wedding? I made my decision. I would attend as planned, wear the hideous dress and smile for the cameras. But I would not stay silent if Amber attempted to humiliate me publicly. Some boundaries once crossed could never be redrawn. What I didn't anticipate was that the wedding day would unfold in ways none of us could have predicted, bringing secrets to light that would forever change the dynamics of our family. Hey everyone! Can you believe what's happening in this family drama? I'm absolutely shocked by Amber's plans for the slideshow. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button, it really helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more shocking family drama stories like this one. I'm dying to know what you think will happen next. Will Savannah expose the truth at the wedding? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Now, let's continue with the story and see what happens on this disaster of a wedding day. The Henderson Miller wedding was the social event of the season in Boston's elite circles. The historic street, Cecilia's Church downtown, was adorned with thousands of white roses and those precious imported orchids Amber had insisted upon. Outside, a fleet of vintage Rolls-Royces waited to transport the wedding party to the reception at the Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel, where a ballroom had been transformed into an enchanted garden at the cost of what could have funded a modest house. I stood in the bridal suite at the hotel, already stuffed into my neon green nightmare of a dress, watching as 5 professionals fussed over Amber's hair, makeup, and gown. Our mother hovered nearby, alternating between dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief and snapping photos for social media. "Isn't she just breathtaking?" Mom gushed to no one in particular. "I've never seen a more beautiful bride." Amber caught my eye in the mirror and smirked. "Savannah, be a dear and fetch my special champagne. The one Dad had imported from France. It's in that silver cooler." As I moved to comply purely to escape the suffocating atmosphere for a moment, Amber added loudly, "And do try not to trip in those shoes. We all remember your disaster at junior prom." The other bridesmaids giggled on cue. I ignored the jab and retrieved the champagne, expertly opening it, despite Amber's obvious hope that I'd struggle and embarrass myself. As I poured the bubbly liquid into crystal flutes, a hotel staff member entered with a small envelope. "Delivery for Miss Savannah Miller." Amber's head snapped up. "Who's sending my sister notes on my wedding day?" Before I could intervene, she snatched the envelope from the confused staff member and tore it open. Her eyes scanned the brief message, her expression morphing from curiosity to cold fury. "We need to talk before the ceremony. Meet me in the hotel garden." She read aloud, her voice dangerously quiet. The room fell silent. Even our mother stopped her fluttering movements. "Amber, I had no idea," I began, but she cut me off. "Save it." She crumpled the note in her fist. "Even on my wedding day, you can't help trying to steal my spotlight. I didn't ask him to send that." "Of course you did. You've been trying to undermine this relationship from the start." She turned to the wide-eyed bridesmaids. "Did you know she's been secretly meeting with my fiancé for months, throwing herself at him like some desperate, pathetic Amber?" Our mother finally intervened. "That's enough. It's just a note. I'm sure it's nothing important." Amber wasn't finished. "You think I don't know what game you're playing? You've always wanted what was mine. Always tried to take it." She grabbed her phone from the vanity. "Let me show everyone just how pathetic you really are." She pulled up photos, screenshots of text conversations between James and me from the past few months. Innocent exchanges about books and films, but taken out of context, they painted a different picture. "You've been monitoring his phone?" I asked, genuinely shocked. "Of course I have. I'm not stupid, Savannah." Her smile was vicious. "And it's a good thing I did. Now you have a choice. Either you go through with this wedding exactly as planned, humiliating slideshow included, or I show these to Dad and let him know exactly who's been trying to sabotage his arrangement." The threat hung in the air. If our father believed I was intentionally interfering with his financial salvation, I had no doubt he would find ways to make my life miserable. He had connections throughout Boston's publishing industry, connections that could easily blacklist me. Fine, I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. I'll play my part. Excellent. Amber's smile returned. Now I believe it's time to head to the church. My groom is waiting. The journey to Street Cecilia's passed in a blur. I sat silent in the limousine weighing my options while Amber chatted animatedly with the other bridesmaids about the extravagant honeymoon she and James would be taking to the Maldives. As we pulled up to the church, I noticed Catherine Henderson standing near the entrance, her expression troubled as she scanned the arriving guests. When she spotted me emerging from the limousine, she made a subtle motion indicating she needed to speak with me. I need to use the restroom, I announced. I'll meet you inside in a minute. Amber looked suspicious but was quickly distracted by the photographer requesting pre-ceremony shots. I slipped away, making my way toward Catherine. Savannah, she greeted me, pulling me aside to a quiet alcove. I've been trying to reach you. What's wrong? James had a long conversation with me last night. He's finally realized what's happening. The manipulation, the financial arrangements, all of it. Your father made the mistake of drinking too much at the rehearsal dinner and revealed more than he intended. My heart raced. What did James say? He's going to call it off. He can't go through with marrying someone he doesn't love, especially not as part of some business transaction. She squeezed my hand. He loves you, Savannah. He always has. Before I could respond, the wedding planner spotted me. There you are. We're starting in 5 minutes. Everyone needs to line up. Catherine gave me a meaningful look. Just be prepared for anything. The ceremony began with all the pomp and circumstance Amber had demanded. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as the bridesmaids processed one by one down the aisle. When my turn came, I walked slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes on me, the ridiculous dress making me feel like a neon green beacon. At the altar, James stood rigid, his expression unreadable. Our eyes met briefly, and something passed between us. A recognition, perhaps, or a question. Before I could decipher it, the music changed to the traditional bridal march, and everyone rose for Amber's entrance. She was undeniably stunning in her custom Vera Wang gown, our father beaming proudly at her side as they began their procession. The collective gasp from the guests echoed through the vaulted ceiling as Amber glided down the aisle, her triumphant smile firmly in place. When they reached the altar, our father placed Amber's hand in James's and stepped back. The elderly priest smiled benevolently at the couple and began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. As he spoke the familiar words, I noticed James growing increasingly tense. His eyes darted between Amber, my father, and me. When the priest reached the crucial moment, if anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The church fell into expectant silence. No one spoke. The priest nodded, satisfied, and continued. But just as he began the vows, James raised his hand. Wait, he said, his voice echoing in the hushed church. I need to say something. A murmur rippled through the congregation. Amber's smile froze, her eyes widening in alarm. James, she hissed, what are you doing? He turned to face her, his expression resolute. I can't do this, Amber. Not like this. Whatever you're thinking, stop it right now, my father interjected from the front pew, his voice low but threatening. James addressed the assembled guests directly. I apologize to everyone who has traveled to be here today, but this wedding cannot proceed. I've allowed myself to be manipulated into a situation that goes against everything I believe in. Gasps and whispers erupted throughout the church. Amber's face contorted with fury. You cannot be serious, she spat. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? I know exactly what I'm throwing away, James replied calmly, and I know what I'm choosing instead. His eyes found mine, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. My father stood, his face purple with rage. James, think about what you're doing. Our agreement is null and void, James finished. I won't be blackmailed into marriage, Dr. Miller, not even for my career. The word blackmailed sent another shock wave through the guests. Our mother had begun to quietly weep while Amber stood rigid with humiliation. James turned to Amber once more. I'm sorry. You deserve someone who truly loves you, not someone who's been coerced into a relationship. Then in a moment that would be recounted in Boston social circles for years to come, James stepped away from the altar, walked directly to where I stood with the other bridesmaids, and extended his hand to me. Savannah, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. I've loved you since we were 16 years old. I let fear and ambition cloud my judgment, but I'm done living a lie. Will you leave with me? Right now, time seemed to stop as hundreds of eyes turned to me standing there in my ridiculous green dress facing the most important decision of my life. You wouldn't dare, Amber seethed, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the rage and humiliation, I saw something I'd never recognized before: fear. Fear of losing not just James or the wedding, but the security our father had promised her. For the first time, I understood that Amber was as much a victim of our parents' manipulations as I was, though in very different ways. But understanding didn't mean I had to continue the cycle. I took James's hand. Yes. What followed was chaos. Amber screamed obscenities as James and I walked back down the aisle together. My father attempted to intercept us but was blocked by Catherine Henderson and, surprisingly, several of James's medical colleagues who had understood the situation immediately. Our mother collapsed dramatically into her seat while the guests buzzed with equal parts shock and delight at the unexpected drama. As we burst through the church doors into the bright afternoon sunlight, James pulled me close and kissed me. A real kiss, free from secrets and manipulation. When we broke apart, both laughing and breathless, I spotted Rachel from the bridal party giving us a thumbs up from the church steps. Where do we go now? I asked suddenly, aware that we had no plan. James grinned. I still have those tickets to Chicago. The job offer stands. But first, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the note he'd tried to send me earlier. This was what I wanted to tell you before the ceremony. Read it. I unfolded the paper, my hands trembling slightly. Savannah, I've been a coward. I let myself be manipulated by fear and ambition, but I won't make that mistake again. I love you. I've always loved you. Meet me in the garden so we can figure out how to stop this wedding together. Whatever comes after, we'll face it together. Jay, I looked up at him, my heart full. I never got this message. Amber intercepted it. I figured as much when you didn't show, he said gently, wiping away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. So I made a backup plan. Quite the dramatic one, I laughed. Seemed fitting given the circumstances. His expression grew serious. I know this won't be easy. Your father can make things difficult for both of us professionally. We'll figure it out, I said with newfound confidence. Together, as we climbed into one of the waiting Rolls-Royces directing the confused driver to take us to my apartment, I glanced back at the church. Amber stood on the steps, her wedding dress billowing around her, looking lost and furious in equal measure. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment I felt no triumph, only sadness for what could have been between us if our parents had fostered love instead of competition. The fallout would come later, the explanations, the gossip, the professional consequences. But as James squeezed my hand, I knew with absolute certainty that we had made the right choice, breaking free from a cycle of manipulation that had controlled our lives for too long. The days following what Boston society quickly dubbed the wedding that wasn't passed in a whirlwind of consequences and revelations. James and I retreated to my apartment, temporarily disconnecting from the outside world as we processed everything that had happened and planned our next steps. My phone exploded with texts and calls, some from genuinely concerned friends, others from gossip-hungry acquaintances, and a barrage from my parents that ranged from furious accusations to tearful pleas to fix this situation. I ignored them, all needing time to find solid ground before engaging with the aftermath. On the third day, there was a knock at my door. James was at the hospital dealing with the professional fallout of angering Dr. Richard Miller. I peered through the peephole, half expecting to see my father or Amber ready to continue the drama. Instead, I found Rachel still wearing the bridesmaid dress necklace Amber had insisted we all purchase as keepsakes. "Can we talk?" she asked when I opened the door. "I come bearing gifts and information." The gifts turned out to be a bottle of expensive champagne, rescued from the reception. Seemed a waste to leave it, and a USB drive. The information was even more valuable. "After you and James left, all hell broke loose," Rachel recounted, sipping champagne from a coffee mug since all my proper glasses were packed for the move to Chicago. "Amber had a complete meltdown, screaming, throwing things. Your father wasn't much better. But here's the interesting part in her rage. Amber started revealing things she probably shouldn't have. Like what I asked, though I had my suspicions. Like the fact that she never actually loved James. She kept screaming about how she'd done everything right and upheld her end of the bargain. Then she turned on your father, accusing him of promising her financial security in exchange for marrying James. And now failing to deliver." I nodded slowly. The guests must have been shocked. That's an understatement. Most left pretty quickly, but not before Amber decided to play the slideshow she prepared to humiliate you. I think she was hoping to somehow damage your reputation in absentia. That's when your mother finally snapped. My mother? This genuinely surprised me. Eleanor Miller had always been Amber's greatest enabler. Rachel nodded. She physically unplugged the projector, told Amber she'd gone too far, and then, "This is the part you won't believe." She turned to your father and said, "This is what happens when you try to sell your daughters instead of they loving them." I sat in stunned silence. My mother, who had spent decades perpetuating the toxic competition between Amber and me, had finally recognized her role in the disaster. "There's more," Rachel continued, pointing to the USB drive on my coffee table. "That slideshow Amber created, I downloaded a copy before your mother unplugged everything. You should see what she was planning to show." Later that evening, when James returned from the hospital, we viewed the contents of the drive together. The slideshow was exactly as cruel as Amber had promised. Embarrassing childhood photos, excerpts from my diary, details of past relationship failures. But it also contained something unexpected. Financial documents detailing the arrangement between my father and James, including projected figures of how much money the Miller family stood to gain from access to James's trust fund. "This is enough to destroy your father professionally," James said quietly as we scrolled through the documents. "Medical ethics boards take a very dim view of doctors who essentially try to sell their daughters for financial gain." "I don't want to destroy him," I admitted. "Despite everything, he's still my father." "What do you want to do then?" I considered the question carefully. "I want freedom, for both of us. Freedom from their manipulation and control." We decided to use the documents as leverage rather than weapons. James drafted an email to my father attaching selected files from the USB drive with a simple message. "We know everything. We're moving to Chicago and starting fresh. If you attempt to interfere with either of our careers, these documents will be sent to the appropriate authorities. Leave us alone and this stays private." It was hardball but necessary given my father's vindictive nature and extensive connections. Within hours, we received a terse reply. Message received, "Good luck in Chicago." A week later, as we packed the last of our belongings for the move, a more unexpected visitor arrived, my mother looking smaller and older than I remembered. "May I come in?" she asked hesitantly. I stepped aside, allowing her to enter the nearly empty apartment. James excused himself, tactfully giving us privacy. "I've left your father," she announced, without preamble, sitting on one of the few remaining chairs. "After 35 years of marriage, I finally realized what we've been doing to you girls." "What made you realize now?" I asked, not unkindly but wary of another manipulation. "Watching you walk out of that church with James." Her eyes filled with tears. "The look on your face. It was pure love and courage, something I haven't felt or shown in decades." And then seeing Amber's reaction, she shook her head. "We created this situation, Richard and I. We turned what should have been a loving sisterhood into a battlefield." It wasn't a perfect apology. She still didn't fully acknowledge her active role in fostering the rivalry, but it was a start. "Have you spoken to Amber?" I asked. "She won't see me. She's moved to New York, telling everyone she called off the wedding because she discovered James was unfaithful." "Your father is supporting this narrative to save face." "Of course he is," I sighed. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," my mother continued. "I just wanted you to know that I see now what we did wrong and I'm trying to change. And," she hesitated, "I'm proud of you, Savannah, for having the courage to choose love over obligation." The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear from her landed strangely now that I no longer needed her approval. But they mattered nonetheless. After she left, promising to stay in touch but respecting our need for distance, James found me staring out the window at the Boston skyline I'd soon be leaving behind. "Are you okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I think I am," I replied, leaning into him. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm making choices based on what I want, not in reaction to Amber or my parents. "What do you want?" he murmured against my hair. "To write, to love you, to build something real without manipulation or competition." He turned me to face him. "That sounds perfect. And what about Amber? Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" I considered the question seriously. "I don't know. Part of me hopes that someday, when we've both healed from our parents' influence, we might find a way to be actual sisters instead of rivals. But that's up to her as much as me." What I didn't know then was that reconciliation would come in the most unexpected way through circumstances neither Amber nor I could have anticipated. But that's a story for another time. A story of growth, forgiveness, and the complicated journey of redefining family on our own terms. For now, as James and I boarded our flight to Chicago 3 days later, I felt only the lightness of possibility stretching before us. We had broken free from a toxic pattern decades in the making, choosing authenticity over obligation and love over ambition. Whatever challenges awaited us in our new life, we would face them together without the shadow of manipulation hanging over us. As the plane took off, I caught a final glimpse of Boston below us, the city that had witnessed both our separation and reunion. It would always be part of our story, but no longer the setting. We were writing a new chapter, now one entirely our own. I can hardly believe how this journey has unfolded. If you've been following along and enjoyed this wild ride of family drama and unexpected twists, please hit that like button to let me know. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever witnessed or experienced family dynamics that turned toxic and how you handled it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about relationships, family struggles, and the sweet taste of karmic justice. Now let's wrap up this incredible story with the conclusion. 1 year after the wedding that wasn't, James and I had settled comfortably into our new life in Chicago. His position at the Children's Hospital had proven even more fulfilling than anticipated, and my career had taken an unexpected but exciting turn. Rather than continuing in publishing, I'd channeled my experiences into writing, and my first novel, A thinly veiled account of family rivalry and betrayal had been accepted by a major publishing house. Our apartment, overlooking Lake Michigan, felt worlds away from the suffocating dynamics of Boston. We'd made new friends, established routines, and begun discussing marriage on our own terms without financial arrangements or family manipulation. Contact with my parents remained minimal. My mother sent occasional emails updating me on her new life in a small coastal town where she'd opened a modest interior design studio. My father had never directly contacted me, though I heard through mutual connections that his practice was struggling without the financial infusion he'd counted on through Amber's marriage to James. As for Amber herself, she had effectively vanished from my life. According to social media, she'd reinvented herself in New York, working for a luxury PR firm and dating a hedge fund manager. She never acknowledged what had happened at the wedding, instead crafting a narrative where she'd heroically discovered James's infidelity and called things off herself. I didn't bother to correct the fiction, let her save face if it helped her move on. That spring, I received an unexpected email from Katherine Henderson. Dear Savannah, I hope this message finds you and James well. I've been meaning to reach out for some time, but wanted to respect your need for space after everything that happened. I'm writing because I've received troubling news about your sister. A mutual friend in New York mentioned that Amber has been struggling with severe depression following a recent miscarriage. Apparently, she's isolated herself from friends and colleagues, and there are concerns for her well-being. I understand the complicated history between you two, but I thought you should know. With love, Catherine. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure how to feel. Amber had caused me immeasurable pain over the years, culminating in the wedding debacle. Yet the news of her suffering stirred something in me. Not satisfaction, as the teenage version of myself might have felt, but a complicated empathy. What is it? James asked, noticing my expression as he entered the living room. I handed him my laptop. After reading the email, he looked up at me. Are you thinking of reaching out to her? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me feels like it's not my responsibility, after everything she did. But another part wonders if this is a chance to break the cycle, to choose compassion over competition even when it's not easy. James took my hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But remember, you're not responsible for fixing your family. You've worked hard to build boundaries. I nodded, appreciating his perspective. I think I need time to consider this. For days I wrestled with the decision. I discussed it with my therapist, who gently pointed out that reaching out to Amber didn't mean I was obligated to resume a relationship if it proved toxic again. It can be an act of compassion without being an invitation to more pain, she suggested. Finally, I composed a simple email. Amber, I heard about your recent loss and wanted to say I'm sorry you're going through this difficult time. Despite our complicated history, I would never wish such pain on you. If you want to talk, my number is below. Savannah. I hit send before I could overthink it, expecting either no response or perhaps a scathing rejection. What I received 3 days later was neither. I'm at the Four Seasons in Chicago for a work conference this weekend. Room 1542. Saturday at 2 p.m. if you want to come. The message was classic Amber. Minimal emotion, positioned as if she were doing me a favor rather than responding to my olive branch. Yet, the fact that she'd responded at all and suggested meeting was significant. Are you sure you want to do this alone? James asked as I prepared to leave that Saturday. I could wait in the lobby. I need to do this myself, I said, though my stomach was in knots. This is between Amber and me. The Four Seasons was only a 15-minute walk from our apartment. Each step felt weighted with the history between my sister and me. Years of rivalry, betrayal, and pain. By the time I knocked on room 1542, my heart was racing. Amber opened the door wearing an immaculate white pantsuit, her hair and makeup flawless as ever. Only the shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed but still visible up close, suggested her recent struggles. "You came," she said, her tone unreadable. "Come in." The suite was luxurious with panoramic views of the city and lake. Amber gestured to a sitting area where a tea service had been arranged. Always the perfect hostess, even in crisis. We exchanged awkward pleasantries about the weather and the hotel as she poured tea. Finally, I broke the tension. "I was sorry to hear about your loss, Amber. That must have been incredibly difficult." She stiffened almost imperceptibly before setting down her cup. "Who told you? Was it Mom?" "No, it was a mutual friend. I haven't spoken much with Mom." "Well, that makes two of us." A bitter smile crossed her lips. "Apparently, I'm as much to blame for that wedding disaster as Dad is." An uncomfortable silence fell between us. I waited, sensing Amber had more to say. "You were right," she finally continued, her voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear her. "About everything. Dad was using me, us, as pawns in his financial games. I knew it was happening and I let it happen because—" She trailed off, looking out at the lake. "Because I prompted gently. Because I thought that's what love looked like in our family," she admitted, meeting my eyes directly for what felt like the first time in years. "Transactions, competitions, proving your worth through what you could provide or achieve." The raw honesty stunned me. This was a side of Amber I'd never seen. Vulnerable, self-aware. "The baby wasn't planned," she continued, her voice wavering slightly. "Marcus, the man I've been seeing in New York, he said all the right things at first. But when I told him I was pregnant suddenly, he had concerns about our relationship timeline. By the time I lost the baby at 14 weeks, he'd already moved on to someone else." "I'm so sorry, Amber." "The thing is," she said, tears finally breaking through her careful composure, "I realized I was becoming Dad. I chose Marcus because of his family connections, his money. Not because I loved him. I was perpetuating the same cycle. And then when I lost the baby, no one was there. Not Mom, not Dad, not Marcus. No one." Without thinking, I moved to sit beside her on the couch and took her hand. "I'm here now." She looked down at our joined hands. The first time we'd touched without competition or malice in decades. "Why?" she asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "After everything I did to you, the wedding, James, the slideshow. All of it. Because we're sisters," I said simply. "And maybe it's time we figured out what that actually means without Mom and Dad's influence." "I don't know if I know how to do that," Amber admitted. "I've been competing with you for so long, I'm not sure I know how to just be your sister." "Me neither. But maybe we can learn." What followed was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. For hours, we unpacked our shared childhood, acknowledging the ways our parents had pitted us against each other and the ways we'd internalized that competition. We cried, we laughed, and yes, we argued, old habits emerging and then being consciously set aside. "I was jealous of you," Amber confessed at one point. "Not just because of James, but because you always seemed so authentic. You knew who you were. I was just trying to be whatever would win Dad's approval. And I was jealous of how easily everything seemed to come to you," I admitted. "How confident you always were." Seemed being the operative word, she said with a sad smile. "None of it was easy. I was just better at faking it." As evening fell, we ordered room service and continued talking. It wasn't a miracle reconciliation. Decades of hurt couldn't be resolved in a single conversation, but it was a beginning. Before I left, Amber asked the question I'd been expecting all day. "Are you and James happy?" "Yes," I answered honestly. "We are." She nodded, a complex emotion crossing her face. "Good." "He wasn't right for me. I see that now. I wanted him because Dad wanted him for me, and because She hesitated because you loved him. I'm sorry for that, Savannah. Truly. Thank you for saying that. At the door, we hugged, awkwardly at first, then with genuine emotion. I'm staying in Chicago until Tuesday, Amber said. Maybe we could have dinner with James too if he's willing. I'd like that, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. Over the following months, Amber and I established a cautious relationship. Weekly phone calls, occasional visits. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes old patterns emerged and we had to consciously redirect. But slowly we began building something new. A sisterhood based on choice, rather than obligation, on understanding, rather than competition. Amber eventually moved to Chicago herself, taking a position with a boutique PR firm that specialized in promoting arts organizations, a surprising choice that aligned more with her actual interests than her previous high-pressure luxury marketing role. She bought a condo 20 minutes from our apartment, close enough for regular contact, but far enough for healthy boundaries. When James and I married in a simple ceremony at the Botanic Garden that fall, Amber stood beside me. Not as a reluctant maid of honor in a hideous dress, but as my sister wearing a gown she'd chosen herself in a color that complemented rather than clashed. Our parents were not invited. Some boundaries needed to remain firm, at least for now. The most profound moment came during Amber's toast at our small reception. To my sister and her husband, she said, raising her glass with uncharacteristic nervousness. Thank you for showing me that true love isn't a competition or a transaction, it's a choice you make every day. She paused, emotion catching in her voice. And Savannah, thank you for making another choice, to give me a second chance at being your sister. I promise I won't waste it. As James and I began planning for our future, discussing children and career moves, Amber remained a part of our lives, not as the rival from my past, but as family I had chosen to embrace despite our history. The story of what happened at the wedding that wasn't became less central to our identities as we created new stories together. Holidays celebrated without manipulation. Achievements celebrated without comparison, difficulties faced with mutual support rather than schadenfreude. Sometimes people would ask about the dramatic wedding that never happened, eager for gossip. But increasingly, I found myself saying simply, that was another lifetime. What matters is what we chose to build afterward. And in those choices, the daily decisions to practice compassion over competition, understanding over judgment, I found a freedom that no fairy tale wedding could have provided. The freedom of authenticity, of boundaries, and of love freely given rather than strategically deployed. It turns out that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't actually revenge at all. It's breaking free from the cycle that made it seem necessary in the first place. Wow, what a journey this story has been. I want to thank each and every one of you who stayed with me until the very end. If you've ever experienced family drama or had to rebuild a broken relationship, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Has karma or justice played a role in your family story? How did you move forward? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories with unexpected twists and important life lessons. Share this video with someone you think might need to hear that even the most damaged relationships can sometimes be healed with time, honesty, and the courage to break old patterns. Thank you all for watching. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't getting even free. It's getting free. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.